Here we go. All right, everybody. That was bad.
So I will bite my tongue, tame these emotions.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to an edition of No Small Podcast. We are Dens. We thought that we would. What?
We're not really calling this No Small Podcast, are we?
Yeah, why did you just interrupt me during the whole intro of the thing?
Because I don't remember agreeing to that. To me, that sounds ridiculous.
I mean, we got nothing else to do.
I'm willing to be wrong. I'm just asking the question.
This is why we can't ever do anything.
Why don't you just do this? How about you say, hey, this is No Small Podcast, where we talk about a commentary of our album, Taming Tongues.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sean. We are Dens. This is Josh, and Brandon. And this is the No Small Podcast, non-podcast video cast that could potentially become a podcast if Brandon's okay with it. So what we're going to do over the next couple weeks is we're going to talk about the album Taming Tongues, which just came out March 6th of 2020. And so this first kind of installment of that is we're going to talk and discuss just the album in general. And then after that, I think we might do song by song, unless there's a mutiny and, people throw us off of Facebook or unlike our page or stop following us on MySpace.
Or death threats.
So we're going to jump in and just discuss, I guess, the concept, the writing, the influence behind the why now of Taming Tongues. So guys are just going to jump in as they want. And so I guess I do have a question I want to ask later, so I won't ask it now. But I guess why Taming Tongues and why now?
Sure. Okay, I'll field this one real quick. So we finished No Small Tempest, which was a really exegetical look at the book of Jonah. I'm getting a shaking a head down there. It's fine. Whatever. So we did No Small Tempest, and this go round we knew that we needed an album. And for me, I know that I just wanted to try something that was a little more like self-reflective, a little introspective or whatever. And so I don't know how the idea came about, but we talked about like what the meaning of words in the weight that they hold, and I guess that was probably just really reflective of the time that we were all going through, just trying to communicate and like dealing with breakdowns in communication and stuff like that. So that's how that started.
So for those of you that maybe aren't as familiar with us and the rest of our discography, when we sort of put out From Small Seeds Come Giant Trees, the theme was the attributes of God. And so every album has been a different theme as we work through different just things that we're going through. So From Small Seeds was the attributes of God. No Small Tempest, as Josh said, was more of a reflection on the story of Jonah. And then now we've sort of turned inwardly within Taming Tongues to deal with some of our own issues and problems and things that have come up between the four of us, but also in other relationships and things that we're just seeing in the world. Especially, we knew it was going to come out in 2020. And so the idea of being very wise in how you're using language and words and what you have to say and all of that, and the miscommunication that happens. All of the politics going on right now, and I don't want to get into all that, but I mean, just everything that is dividing our world. It seems like very often we're talking past one another, and if we could just use a little bit more wisdom in our communication, the world would be a better place. And I think that it's very God honoring when we do that. I mean, we're instructed to do that, and we want it to point the finger towards ourselves first. And I feel like Taming Tongues really is that. It's more than anything, it's a message that we need it to work out between the four of us.
Yeah, I know. One thing that we were really worried about as we were writing this record, as opposed to like even jumping back to from Small Seeds, was, we're like, man, there's not really anything in the record within these songs that felt I don't know, necessarily like a worship song, if you will. I mean, I know on Small Seeds we had like Debt Payer, which is the Jesus Paid It All hymn. But one of you guys want to just address that, how, I guess that fear, and then maybe how that fear was, for the lack of a better word, tamed, because of just all the concepts, the different things that we were able to discuss in this record.
So are you asking, when we were working through this, the fact that this was less of an overtly like Christian record, in that, in our other albums, we actually had hymns. We don't have any hymns on this album. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I know. I mean, like when we talked through the writing process, like I know, we were like, there's not really like a worship song in this record. All of I mean, I guess it depends on how you define worship, right? Because I look at a song like "When," and "When" isn't necessarily like a God, you're glorious, we bow down before you type song, but it's worship in the fact that it's real communication.
Right.
It's real. It's not just some fake conversation or some regurgitation of words. It's an actual real conversation between us and God.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brandon. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I mean, I think maybe the word that you were looking for is like, there's not necessarily like an overtly praiseful song on this record, like where we're really like admonishing who God is. And I mean, there is that in some of these songs and those concepts. Sorry, I'm shaking the camera because I'm shaking the table. But like there wasn't, a lot of it was introspective, and we weren't necessarily, hey, we're going to have like a very kind of like praiseful kind of song built into the record. So that's just kind of where we ended up with this.
I really do feel like we explored this idea of wisdom as sort of this central thesis of the album. The thesis being even foolish men are wise when they learn to keep quiet, right? Like that is the message of the album in a sentence, and then we expand out on that throughout the different songs. But what does it mean to be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger? So in using wisdom and tact and understanding, your own struggles and issues when you communicate with others, that is an instruction given to us by God. It's very much a part of the Christian life, just like praise is. When you were talking about that, Sean, it reminded me of the Psalms. So when you look at the Psalms, the majority of the Psalms are what are classified as the lament Psalms. These are Psalms that are crying out to God in a time of trouble and saying, God, I'm in the midst of something pretty terrible here. Where are you? Can you help me? I need help, whatever it may be. The Psalms of praise are actually much fewer, which would seem to indicate that, in the life of the Christian, we go through all different seasons and different needs, and our prayer life changes. And sometimes that prayer life is very much praise and thanksgiving. There's a thanksgiving category of the Psalms. But sometimes our prayer life is much more, let's throw down all of the pretenses and just talk to God like I'm in need, I'm in trouble, I'm working through something. Let me just be honest with you, because you know exactly where my heart and mind is anyway. So here it is, God. Here's what we're dealing with. So when we look at wisdom and taming the tongue and speech and all of the relationship stuff that goes with that, I just feel like we need to focus in on some of the more serious things, and reflecting through some of those things, so to the point of maybe not always turning it directly to praise, maybe not always turn it directly to thanksgiving, as some psalms would, but we're turning it more towards, at times, lament, at times reflection, and at times more wisdom.
Yeah,
I know.
Go ahead, JT.
Oh yeah. I only speak so often, so I gotta
So when
capitalize on this.
Please let him
Yeah,
talk.
that's right. Yeah, like I know the fear. I know that we were really cognizant of like just the perception that we're doing a full length album or whatever, and so are they shooting for mainstream appeal? Did they cross over and now they're watering it down or whatever? But I really don't think that's the case. Josh, do you want to elaborate maybe on like James and how that's like a New Testament proverb?
Yeah, so James is like a New Testament proverb.
Cool. Nailed it.
Yeah, there you go. No, I mean, that's just right. That's it. So much of Scripture is giving us these instructions about using good wisdom, good biblical wisdom. And I don't think Christian songs need to Jesus juke all the time with a million hallelujahs in every chorus. I think it can be just as much truly a God honoring, biblically centered song, if you will, by reflecting on that wisdom and instruction that we're given. In the case of James, but also the Proverbs, also the Psalms. You've got proverbial Psalms in there too. James is very much a New Testament proverb. A lot of people will talk about it that way. That's something that we really sort of sat on quite a bit in this writing process, is like, what does it mean to speak clearly, precisely, empathetically, to care about other people when we talk, to use our words in such a way that we're not harming others, but we're actually bringing life and not detriment. So just thinking through some of those things, and how do you put that to music? How do you put that to music in a way that's impactful and meaningful, but still gets the cathartic piece in there as good art does. So yeah, I mean, I think very much it's every bit a reflection on Scripture and applying that Scripture to us as anything else we've ever done. I definitely believe that.
So we had this whole overlaying concept of the tongue, and so there's speech, like in foolish, lips, teeth. So the whole like mouth reference thing, communication in general. But I don't know if anybody else has picked up on it. Throughout the record, there is this underlying subplot of disasters, natural disasters. And so we, through most every song, you can pick those up. And I don't know, JT, do you want to just maybe, that was so for those that don't know, this whole concept was mostly Josh Tomlinson. And I remember after we shot the Dead Rise video, we were sitting out on the beach, and he had already spoken to Waltman about it and was like, "Hey, this is my idea." And kind of thinking,
where was I?
You were sitting right there, but again,
It was late. I was probably asleep.
It was the middle of the day. We were sitting out on the beach, but like most things go, Brandon's there, but yeah. So, anyways, so Josh was talking to us about this, and then kind of had this idea of this underlying disasters thing. So I don't know. You want to grab what how that is interwoven with the tongue? I mean, we see that in James. We see that in the tongue being like a fire, and those type things. But I don't know. Speak to some of that.
Yeah, so I know, like, first of all, like you were saying, we wanted to have this concept of communication. I know sometimes concept album, like that's a dirty phrase or whatever. But like, at least for me, and I think for us together, just I think we gravitate towards concept albums because it helps us organize our thoughts. And so, like, I mean, really, Taming Tongues is an album about communication. Like, you can't get much more broad than that, other than, like, I don't know, an album about life, you know? So, yeah, so, we wanted to make sure that we're focused on this thesis of communication or whatever. But maybe it's because I watched like too much Weather Channel growing up or whatever. But like they always had those specials. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Cantor
they,
is the man. I
yeah,
love it when he puts the helmet and the goggles on and stands out
yeah,
there in like 10-mile-an-hour wind, and he's just getting it, and he's about to get blown away, and then like this little girl on a tricycle like
yeah,
just rides by in the background, and she's just going about her day. It's great.
yeah, yeah. So maybe it's too many like Weather Channel specials or whatever. But like, I don't know what it was, but it just like this thought hit me of like we trust that the ground that we're standing on like is there, it's not going anywhere or whatever, but like the reality is the earth could like rip open, swallow us up, just decimate things, and so I took that idea, I guess, of if you can't even trust the foundation that you're standing on, like what really do you have to stand on? So like in communication, if you don't even have a foundation when you're communicating, like it's just going to lead to bad results. And so um, we tried to like take that in different ways. I know, again, with No Small Tempest, like we used a lot of water references and stuff like that. And I guess there's some of that still in Taming Tongues, but we really tried to pivot towards just natural disasters in general. So you've got volcanoes, we've got earthquakes, we do have a hurricane at some point in there. So um, oh yeah, wildfires and stuff like that. So it just like this idea that yeah, so just this idea that like um in the same way that we have this expectation that the earth is it's solid and unchanging or whatever, and maybe that's not the case.
You're a flat earther.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
yeah. That's what this podcast is really about. No, just that like like if you don't have a rapport with the person that you're talking to, like communication is going to fall apart just the same. Or you can use your words as a weapon, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's really where that subplot went.
Yeah, I think so too. With like the like talking about us doing concept albums and things like that, giving us a I guess a place to start or to organize our thoughts. This was different than No Small Tempest in the fact that No Small Tempest was the 4 chapters of Jonah. So you really had to write around that, and then we just made the music fit the feel of what was being said in Jonah. And so with what I really liked about this kind of natural disaster subplot is with each song being able to really we were very loose with, we knew we were talking about Taming Tongues. So we really wanted every song to kind of point to that overarching theme. We knew we were discussing communication. We knew we were discussing the weight of our words and what they mean. But I really felt like this natural disaster subplot gave us kind of the canvas background for each song. So when you're writing a song, And when you're trying to lay out your thoughts or paint a picture with words, those natural disaster subplots really helped us to be able to give a really good visual aesthetic to each song. And so when you have a song like Even, which is talking about the weight of our words and about retribution and things like that, you really kind of help embolden what that song means when you give it this earthquake and this void and this chasm and the earth opening up and swallowing us whole, and how that relates to our words. So just that whole metaphor really helped to paint a really good picture for each song, and helped us really organize our thoughts for the songs in those ways. So with that concept, that's how I guess I kind of wanted it to be a little bit different than No Small Tempest, in the fact that I didn't want to be anchored like deep into a very deep specific concept, which I feel No Small Tempest was. What about you guys? How did you? I mean, this can be even music. This can even be instrumentation. How did you want Taming Tongues to be different than No Small Tempest?
All right, they're not going to say anything. So
I was waiting for you. You haven't really said much.
Who?
You.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I can talk. Yeah. I mean, I think the overall approach to this record, I think it really was more, I don't want to say loose or flexible, but it was, I don't know. I felt like it was, even though it was not exactly an easy process, it was still easier to get the concepts and even to write lyrics. I mean, even the way that we went about it, which I don't know if we want to talk about that yet, as far as how we, okay. Yeah. I mean, so even the way that we wrote lyrics, where we, all four of us were involved in writing the lyrics. And so we were able to really kind of sit back and look at them from a big picture, instead of just writing them down in a notebook. We had stuff written up on a whiteboard, and, we were looking at the different verses and choruses, and, what the subject of each song was, who the subject of each song was, and just being able to kind of take a little bit more liberty on each song, and also kind of commingling them and weaving them in and out. As difficult as the process was, I really enjoyed that, to be able to kind of explore some things that we hadn't before, both for sure musically, but also lyrically and melody wise and stuff like that. I mean, I really enjoyed the process.
Yeah, I'm going to get really nerdy right now, if that's okay. But you guys
Go for it.
Yeah. No, so my theory on music writing is that there's both an objective element and a subjective element. The objective element is the four of us as the writers of the lyrics. When we come together and put together the song, typically we have something in mind that we mean by what's being said in the message of the song. But that's the objective piece. Objectively, there's a meaning that we intend to say and communicate. The subjective piece comes into play when you guys listen to the music and take something personal from it, that maybe is true for you and true for your life and your situation or whatever, that maybe is beyond what we originally envisioned, but that now that has meaning for you in a way that we could have never really understood when we wrote the song originally. So for me, with No Small Tempest, our objective, the scope of our objectivity was limited to the story of Jonah. We had to go to Jonah, and in chapter 1, okay, song number 1, Dead Rise, needs to embody and communicate what chapter 1 of Jonah says. Same thing for chapter 2, 3, and 4. And so our scope is narrowed in the objective meaning, but also probably more narrowed in the subjective meaning too. So when it came time to write Taming Tongues, because we weren't focused on doing a chapter by chapter kind of thing, our scope for what we could say in the objective piece allowed for more meaning possibly, and for more, or at least more variability in the subjective, outcome. So at least that's kind of the way I think about it. Is it was very possible that when we write the lyrics for R and what we mean by who are we then, that may have something way different for you guys when you hear that question than it does for us. And that is perfectly cool, because in that question, we're not trying to follow a chapter in Jonah. We are asking that for us, and you can ask it for yourself.
I think that's the beauty of art. I mean, that it can, it means something different to everyone. And it always blows my mind when I hear people, either one, talk about other people's music, but even when they talk about, our songs and even this record specifically, like what they got out of it. And I'm just like, whoa.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
We want to communicate it in a way that, again, kind of nerdy, that ensures that you're not taking something out of it that is completely opposite from what we mean. We want it to be within the bounds of what we're trying to say, but the way that you're applying it and the way that you're taking it has a lot of range. And, I think something like what we did with this album, or at least what we tried to do, allows for plenty of range and variability there.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I love that when people hear something or experience something through the record that is beyond what we could have set there and thought up within our own mind of we want to achieve this deep connection. So it's really cool when that happens beyond what we ever anticipated that it could be. I guess I want to shift gears a little bit to, I guess, just the process. I know Waltman alluded to it a little bit. I feel like we've refined our writing process a little bit. It's still a point of contention throughout the years. I will say one thing that I absolutely love is that the lyricism does not rest on my shoulders, because if it did, it would be awful. It'd be terrible. And so lyrics are pretty much the basically the last thing that happens in our writing process. Even throwing back to old band days, unless you guys want me to throw out the name of the old band. But me, Josh, and Josh were in a band back in college a long time ago. And I just even remember writing there at House 169 that I was even getting music together. I would be bouncing that off of JT. And so this process was no different. Usually what would happen is Josh and I would get together, JT and I would get together, and here at my house in the studio, and we just bounce different ideas off one another and kind of come up with a musical structure, come up with kind of where we wanted to go with the song musically, and then let the guys hear that. We kind of bounce that back and forth. Brandon would come in, lay some drums down to it. We would send that off to Waltman. He'd put some guitar down to it. We'd have basically the structure of a song. And then what we did in October, we tracked this at the end of October, the beginning of October. We planned. Now, I shortened that time period up, and I know Waltman just wants to say something about it, but I do procrastinate on stuff. Okay, I don't feel like I'm that awful at it, but I do procrastinate on stuff. And I mean, for me, and this is like this is just a difference of personalities and how we work. But I do feel personally that a lot of times I write. Sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes I write better when I'm under the gun than I do when I'm like, I've got like 4 weeks to get this done. Let me just knock it out right here real quick at the beginning of the 4 weeks. That's just me personally. It's not how it works for everybody else.
It is a weird thing that always happens with you,
So,
but
so
it always works.
The funny thing about it is that we're writing an album on good communication while trying to have good communication about writing the album.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that like some of the lyrics in this album came from like actual arguments that we had
While writing the album.
while writing the album. Yeah, absolutely.
I loved when we were writing the lyrics for They, and Waltman was like, "Oh, I got this chorus right here. Let me take this." And he writes it and reads it back to us, and I'm like, "Ouch."
I knew it was an ouch moment. It's funny.
I won't say the same thing like the last time. It didn't mean the same to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, but so we would painstakingly make it through that process to get to the point where we were ready to get final structures and really get the final lyrics. Now we've been writing kind of lyrics, bouncing ideas back and forth, the entire time, the entire process. For me with the songs, I'm not necessarily great with lyricism, but I feel like my thing is I'm pretty good at the melody. So I write the melodies for the songs. And so I've got this melody in my head and I know how I want the words to sing, but I just don't know what words I want. And so we decide that, and I love that. But my family has a place in West Virginia in the mountains. There is no TV there. There is no internet. There is no cell phone service. I remember sending Waltman to Walmart to get one of those calling cards, because that's the only way you can make a phone call out of there is you have to use one of those old school calling cards. And he was like, I have no idea what this is. The guy here at Walmart has no idea what this is. And I'm like, oh, I guess we're not making phone calls except to 911 if we need it, because we don't have a calling card. But yeah, so absolutely zero communication when we're writing a song about communication, which is ironic in and of itself. But so went up there in the fall. It's beautiful. We took like 5 days straight, took food with us and hung out there. It's like a cabin thing, and set all of our equipment up and just played through the songs. Spent probably 4 or 5 hours per song, just getting the structures finalized and then really working on the lyrics and what we wanted everything to say.
They were long days.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it sounds like this is vacation, but honestly, I think we worked like 14 to 16 hours a day.
It's
like every day.
We were pushing it to get it done in that time.
We were worried.
Yeah, it was.
So I will say this, I think writing an album is one of the hardest things I've ever done.
I've been saying that.
And you're working on a PhD, so not to.
Well, but the thing is like you're trying to get to Sean's point. In a lot of bands, I feel like the lyric writing and the melodies come from the lead singer, and like the lead singer goes and writes it, and then the rest of the band just comes into place and just is a background track to what the lead singer has already put into place. And to Sean's credit, he looks at this as a collaboration. And so really you're talking about bringing 4 voices and 4 things that people want to do in an album together and to coalesce around a single, lyric. That's really, really, really hard to do, because we all are super impassioned about this. We all, this is very important to all of us. We've all spent time, money, effort, resources, taking away time from family to go and do this thing. And so because we're so invested, we all want to be happy with the final product. And so finding a thing that all 4 of us are happy with is tough. So 16-hour days in a cabin, like where you're working all day on this thing, like I don't want to give anybody the impression that, obviously music is fun to us. We love playing music. I would never, I think my soul would die if I couldn't play music. But yeah, I mean, it really is, it's an extremely hard thing to do. And we had tension in terms of like how we each work on things differently. Sean alluded to this, and to his credit, he really is fantastic at taking a concept that, the 3 of us are coming up with and putting it into something that's singable He's really, 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 really good at that. But you've got to push him to that point. And so, I'm very different than that. I'm much more regimented and methodical, but I can't sing. I don't have any melody. I'm awful. I am awful at all of that kind of thing. If I'm not playing guitar, if it comes to vocal melody, I'm terrible. And so, like,
You sang on Oatbringer.
yeah, you guys probably turned me down in the back and put me way in the back.
It was that low baritone, mellow, like Barry Manilow-esque.
Yeah. All four of us strengths and weaknesses coming together is what makes Dens. Yeah. So. I'll say this: I think we are better friends for the process. I feel that way. We've been through all of the crap, to get to something we love, and now
sometimes we're frenemies. We're frenemies, but we become better friends.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the things that I was going to say about the whole process is, like we said, like writing a record about communication, which just happened to be a lot of communication between us, and like. I just want to make sure everybody understands that, like, we really are, like, granted, I don't know which order the screens are, but like, we really are four brothers. And, I'm really thankful and blessed that, like, we have the relationship that we do with each other, that we have grown together, that we have, learned from one another, both in positive ways and negative ways. And, like, I just want to make sure people understand that even though this album was about kind of some internal turmoil or communication issues between us, I'm really thankful that we're able to have grace with one another, and that we were just able to grow together, because it and these guys know, granted, all of you out there watching this don't know, but like, 2019 was a really difficult year for me and my wife, and just to to come out the other side of that and this project, and just to like look back on it, like, I'm really grateful that even though it was hard, that I and we were able to go through that, because I think it's really shaped some other things in our life and our lives. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. Writing this record, writing a record in general brings out the best and worst in me. I've just learned that about myself. Like the tension, the strain, the pressure. Like, you guys are relying on me to put together parts. Like, I'm relying on you to put together your parts and put together something that we all love, to communicate well. And like, it really is like a purging, like, of all of your emotions and everything. And so you get everything out on the table, and then sometimes you're like, oh man, like, I need to ask for forgiveness here, and I need to get rid of this feeling or this thing that I said. And so, like, it's very cathartic. It's very purging. Like, it's a good process, but in the midst of it, it's hard.
Yeah, we also did a first in the process of this record, in that we set it up so that Josh Waltman could record and write guitar parts at his house, and then kind of like, send that stuff to us via the internet.
For those of you that don't know.
So what?
I'm in a different city.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. So Josh Waltman lives in another city, 2-ish hours away, and so we were able to set him up at home. And I say it was somebody other than me. I think it was JT and Sean. Apparently, it was the Tooth Fairy. But anyway, so we were able to do that, and he was able to kind of like, so we sent him the songs, and then he would listen and write stuff, and then send us his ideas and all that kind of stuff. And it was really cool, just the fact that we were utilizing technology just like we are right now, to be able to kind of still work together on things, even though we weren't all in the same place. But I just thought that was cool.
Yeah, we're actually looking for sponsors now. Because we're not going to say which internet storage service we use, but send us some money and maybe we will. Yeah. Maybe we will.
So in that, I guess, tell me. I'll start off, but tell me what you maybe do and don't like about our tracking and mixing production process. I know. So, I mean, with the exception of the vocals on No Small Tempest, we have done nothing out of house tracking and production wise ever. We've always done all of that stuff ourselves. I know when in a band that Waltman and I played in, we went to a studio one time, and I think it completely turned him off to ever going and recording in the studio. And I totally agree with that in recording the vocals to No Small Tempest. You're in there for a scheduled amount of time, and you have this amount of time to get it done. And you can practice all you want to that. You can build up to, that all you want. But if you're having an off day, it comes through. It comes through on the record. Now, I do think that some special moments can happen in that scenario. When I recorded the vocals to Small Seeds, we got down to the studio and we were working with the producer on Hopebringer, and the song had no chorus. And he was like, "Hey, you need a chorus." And I remember going back to the hotel with Brandon and calling Waltman on the phone and being like, we need to write a chorus in like 5 minutes because I've got to go back and lay it down tomorrow. Like no melody, no words, no nothing. I remember opening up to the Psalms, and Waltman and I were discussing that. And to that point, lyrically, the chorus of that song has been something that has helped a lot of people, even personally in our own personal circles, a lot. That reminding that God is good in the pain, though our heart is heavy. He is our refuge. And so, but to our process, I personally like being able to, the way that I do the vocals is I mean, since it's here at my house, I have it all set up myself. I come up here when I want, and I'll just push out a lot of vocal tracks. I just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. Now, Chris Stapleton will tell you that within, usually your gold is within the first 3 takes. Now that was on maybe a couple songs, but most songs it was like way down the line was the good one. And so what I typically do is I'll record all that if I'm feeling good, come up here and do that, and then I'll comp it with a couple of the guys. So we'll sit here and we'll just go through all the vocal takes and say, you like that, you like that, you like this, and then I'll build it from there. But
now is that by word or like by phrase?
I would just say this: even foolish men are wise when they learn to keep quiet. But I know this is something that Waltman. I'm assuming you enjoy this, or it's at least a little less stressful for you to come into the studio by yourself and just be able to do this thing.
Yeah, for me, you guys will attest to this. When it comes to tracking guitar, I'm a perfectionist. And like, yeah,
really.
I mean, honestly, I know this about myself to the point that it's ridiculous. It's truly ridiculous. The things that I will hear later in the record that no one else will ever hear are the things that will drive me up the wall unless I get it exactly right. If the intonation is not quite right, if the bend is not quite there, if it's not quite the right part for that moment in the song, it's going to drive me insane forever. And so I tend to get infatuated on what's in front of me until it's right and done. And so if you were to throw me into a studio where we're paying by the hour, I mean, I'm sure I could get something out there and it would be fine. But I would always know it wasn't exactly perfect like I wanted it to be. So, so in between that, like the performance and the tone, the tones are super important to me too, because we have some great companies that we work with and that we like to, that we really are endorsed by and everything. And we want to represent them well, but also like the tone for us, like something we've learned over the years is that what elevates a live performance and what elevates a studio performance, a lot of times it ends up being the tone. Are you getting really good tones? And for our band, especially, like it's not an EDM, driven type of music. We've got to have really good guitar tones. The guitar is carrying a lot of that. So yeah, I mean, taking the time to dial stuff in, to make sure everything is there, to make sure the performance there, is something that we can do when we track it ourselves. But it requires us to know what we're doing and to have the gear that's necessary to track it. And that's taken us a long time to get there.
Yeah. I did want to say in regards to Waltman's guitar parts, like this record specifically, I actually really liked being able to have some of his guitar parts while I was writing my parts, because the way that I write is to everybody, just whether it's a bass line or, a lead guitar part or even like a rhythm part, but just to be able to have those. Because even like on a song like Two, that middle section, which turned into the intro, I mean, I wrote that to your guitar part. The latter part of Men, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that I kind of wrote to Waltman's lead guitar parts that just, it pushed me to think, outside of my own box. And I like having that option, instead of just laying it all down as a baseline drum track. And then,
I know something we changed up in the process of this record that I really thought was much more helpful, was that in No Small Tempest, when we came together and did our West Virginia writing trip, was when we were actually writing the songs from nothing. Those 4 songs were birthed out of jam sessions, and then 2 of them were completely thrown out and completely rewritten, which was another butting of the heads in and of itself. But this time, what we did was, like I said, JT and I mainly got together with some musical concepts, put it together, sent it over to Waltman. He put some guitar on it, had Brandon come in, put some drums down on it. We went to West Virginia with all the songs basically where we felt like we wanted them, and we just refined the structure there and tracked a live demo with the time signature, with the metronome that we wanted. And then when we came back to actually live track it in the studio, we were really just replacing each instrument as we went down the line, from the demo version. So Brandon could actually just record the actual drums to the song, not to just a scratch vocal and guitar that was uncertain of where it was going, but an actual live track. We'd actually played the song together as a whole. And I thought that was so much more helpful this go around in getting these songs tracked and done than in times past.
It helped me play more confidently because I knew the song instead of like, let me try this for this part. Like I already knew what the next part was that was coming instead of like building it, which really helped.
When you're talking about tracking and capturing, there's the player, themselves, the musician, their ability. There's the mics that you use to do it, but the one of the biggest things that gets overlooked is the performance. And when you don't have that performance, you don't have the heart. You're cutting out the heart of that person's part in the song when they're just playing it but not performing it. And I thought doing it the way we did it, just for me personally, allowed us to capture that heart in a better way.
Yeah, I mean, this is really, credit goes to Sean for having the studio and set up and all that. But it's
been some iterations. We've definitely progressed in the studio.
I won't say what it was originally called back.
We've exceeded the octagon. Welcome
to the octagon, son.
It's funny you say iterations because like that's really what I was thinking about with these songs is that not only did we just we jammed out a song or whatever, but like we went through a couple of iterations of each song. I know for Men, it was probably 5 iterations before we went to West Virginia. And
Men was probably one of the hardest songs to write.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. But yeah, like piecemeal, we were writing these songs and iterating on them and, you know, changing parts and stuff like that. But so when we got to West Virginia, like we were live tracking those to like get the feel for an actual show, you know, to get the performance behind it. And then just like take that back to the studio, clean it up, but like to still have the performance like that. I mean, that was pretty life changing there. So yeah,
Oh,
we were really spoiled
oh yeah.
this go round.
All right. Well, let's end with this. I know
Sure.
we've had some questions. Did you want to say something?
Well, I didn't know if we wanted to talk about like the mixing and or mastering. Why we
Maybe that's
did
what I was
that.
about to ask.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe.
Who's hosting this thing, Brandon?
I don't know.
That's actually not what I was going to ask. But why don't you just speak to that real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a question.
Yeah, sorry. So when everything was said and done, and as far as like tracking in Sean's studio, we ended up working with Matt Bayless again, which is the producer that worked on No Small Tempest. And you know, the process with them to us, we feel like is ideal. I know different producers, mixing producers have different processes, but I mean, you know, he gives us a set amount of time that he's going to be mixing the record, and you know, in a sense, he kind of gives us, unlimited. It's not unlimited, but you know what I'm saying. Like he's really lenient as far as like the number of revisions. And Matt Bayless, if you're watching this right now, I swear that I didn't yell at you via capital letters in a text.
Just anybody out there, like if somebody texts you in capital letters, what is that?
The text was to Sean, not to Matt Bayless. Again,
I just copied and pasted your text and just sent it to him.
Communication, man.
To do?
But anyway, so like Matt Bayless said also kind of like, you know, wanted to work with us if we were going to do something else. And so it just worked out where we felt like, you know what, we can really trust him with executing our vision, really understanding musically where we're coming from, but also everything that he brings to the table. And on this record, I feel like he just straight knocked it out of the park and really brought, you know, granted, I feel like we took a lot more into this record, but you know, he really helped still bring it to life with the mixes, and I'm really grateful for his work on that.
We're a hard band to mix too, I think.
Huh?
I think we're a hard band to mix because we have a lot of instrumentation. We cover, you know, the whole range, the whole spectrum of sound. So getting everything in there where everything's audible, that doesn't take away the power of the music and everything. It's just we're a hard band to mix, and we know that. And he works with us to try to execute the vision. You know, some people, I think that when you work with them, like you throw them the tracks and whatever you get back, that's it.
Which is kind of scary.
Which is super scary when you're basically trusting the final product to them. But with Bayless, like, you know, he hears what we have to say and he's willing to work with us. So that was really meaningful.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty like what Brandon said, but I think just like based on our workflow, it was Matt Bayless's workflow that really kind of sold us on going back. Like that was a known quantity. Like and we liked his workflow. You know, it wasn't like a here's the song and we're done and moving on or whatever. But we were able to have like constant communication and all that stuff with him. It's about communication. That's what it all boils down to. I mean, so I guess the other thing maybe worth bringing up would be the Ballagaires. Maybe is that worth mentioning?
I think I want to get into song specifics with that. So we're gonna over the next couple of weeks, we're gonna do just song by song. They probably won't be as long as this episode one has gone, but episode one was a freaking long Star Wars movie, so that's kind of what this is. Yeah. But I do want to end with this question and it wasn't on here. So tell me, and I'll start. Tell me your most memorable or your most memorable or funniest moment in I guess the past couple months in regards to Taming Tongues in writing the record. My most memorable funny moment, and all of these moments are probably going to involve our writing in West Virginia because just stupid things happen there.
You're going to
But
steal
on 2, JT wrote the lyrics to 2, and I really didn't like. I had listened to the demo that he had done, but I really didn't know what he was saying. And when I found out he was singing "I'm a California Wildfire," the only thing that I could picture was like Josh Tomlinson in chaps with a cowboy hat and a lasso, just like I'm a California Wildfire. And it was just the absolute funniest thing that I have heard in a long time. I thought the lyric was great. I just couldn't get that image out of my head, and I think for the longest time. It's just such a different lyric. It's kind of out there, but that was my funny moment.
Yeah, it was a real Magic Mike moment.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. Who else?
So I'll go. I think you stole mine, by the way, and that's cool.
That's why I went first.
Exactly. Yeah. I usually do that to you. So for me, like when we were in the cabin there in West Virginia, I'll never forget. I volunteered to be the chef for the weekend. So basically, I'm the guy while you guys are practicing. Still, I'm back there cooking meals with an apron on.
I remember that.
For his shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so I thought that was funny. I was basically y'all's. Well, I wouldn't want to say what I was thinking, but I was basically y'all's.
I know what you were thinking.
I'm not gonna say.
Yeah. You were a chef.
He was our chef.
Even foolish men are wise.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, so I think that was I actually really liked that, and it was fun and funny at the same time that I'd be y'all's chef, personal chef.
Your mama's barbecue fried chicken was
right.
Off the hook.
You're right.
What about you, JT? I'm still thinking. I don't know.
I'm gonna not do a cabin one, but there was the time where you tried to chase deer. That was pretty entertaining.
That was just outside the cabin. It was at the same place.
Right. That's not what I was.
Wasn't in the cabin.
Yeah, it's outside of the cabin.
Outside.
No. Yeah. So I guess going back to 2, I was laying down a demo, and it was just me and my sister was there, like helping me track or whatever, because nobody was in the house. And we got to the end part, and I was still kind of waffling on what I wanted the words to be. And so, like, one of the takes I laid down was "Let me be squick to hear," because I couldn't decide if I wanted to say swift or quick. So it just came out squick. And so my sister makes fun of me for that all the time, still to this day. There was also the time when we were actually tracking that song where I don't know if anybody's like seen The Good Place or not, but the part right before the end, I accidentally did a take where I said "curse this forking tongue" instead of forked tongue. Yeah, so that's somewhere in the files there. But yeah, 2 was pretty funny to track for a lot of reasons. Brandon.
Yeah, so I have 2 things. I do remember chasing the deer at the cabin.
Was you did it. And they remember you too.
I'm sure they do. I think one of my things always about the cabin is that we always watch ridiculous movies while we're there, and we watched Hunt for the Wilder People, which is which is a fantastic movie, and so I really like that. But for we had this like it was this gun that was like a fly shooter that had like a string on it, and for whatever reason I just decided that was like my toy the entire time that we were there. So I was just shooting it.
Brandon will pick it up and do that.
Yeah. So I just shot it the entire time that we were there, shooting it across the room, just being distracting. But then I actually have slow-mo videos of Josh Waltman shooting it at me on my iPhone that I just looked at the otit day, which I thought was hilarious. But yeah.
Always fun times up there, especially when the power goes out and it like gets pitch black and you're like,
we sleep with the windows open and we're freezing and we didn't know the windows were open.
Yep, that's true too. That's true too. All righty. Well, I'm going to conclude this inaugural episode of No Small Podcast, non-podcast, videocast, if it pleases His Highness Brandon to maybe one day do a podcast episode. So thank you guys for joining us, and catch us. Catch me outside. How about that?